came home from work expecting to unwind in my backyard oasis, but instead, I found my once crystal clear pool filled with solid cement. That's right, my neighbor, the infamous HOA Karen, had taken it upon herself to completely destroy my property. But what she didn't know, she had just committed a felony, and I had all the proof I needed to take her down. From the moment I moved into the neighborhood, I knew there was something off about Karen. She wasn't just a concerned resident who cared about the community. She was an HOA dictator. You know the type, the kind of person who lives for enforcing every tiny rule, even the ones nobody else actually cares about. The kind who takes it upon themselves to patrol the street like a sheriff, clipboard in hand, just waiting to pounce on the next so-called violation. It started small, a passive-aggressive note about my trash can being improperly positioned by the curb. Then, a warning about my mailbox being the wrong shade of beige. It didn't matter that neither of these things were actual HOA violations. Karen just liked power. The rest of the neighborhood had learned to ignore her. They rolled their eyes at her endless complaints and did their best to avoid confrontation. But me, I had unknowingly committed the ultimate sin in her book. I built a pool. A gorgeous in-ground, crystal-clear pool in my backyard. Completely legal, fully HOA approved. Permits signed, sealed, and filed away. I had done everything by the book. But to Karen, that didn't matter. She hated it. She claimed it didn't fit the aesthetic of the neighborhood, that it was an eyesore, that it lowered property values, which was rich, considering my house was one of the nicest on the block. At first, I didn't take her complaints seriously. What could she do? The HOA had already approved it, and I had the paperwork to prove it. But Karen, she wasn't the kind of person who let things go. Every time I was outside, she'd glare at me from her porch, shaking her head in disgust. When I had guests over, she'd walk by slowly, just to remind me that she was watching. Then came the written warnings, dozens of them, left in my mailbox, slipped under my door, even taped to my car windshield. This pool is a violation. You have until the end of the month to remove it. Failure to comply will result in consequences. I laughed. She had no authority to do anything about my pool, or so I thought. What I didn't realize, Karen wasn't just complaining, she was plotting. The first note arrived just a few days after my pool was completed. A single sheet of paper, typed in bold, notice of violation, shoved into my mailbox. It was signed by Karen. Apparently, my pool was an unauthorized structure that violated HOA aesthetic guidelines. It demanded that I remove it immediately or face escalating consequences. I rolled my eyes and tossed it in the trash. A week later, a second note appeared, this time in an envelope taped to my front door. This is your final warning before penalties are applied. It read, non-compliance will not be tolerated. Again, I ignored it. Karen had no real power. She wasn't a city official, and she wasn't even the HOA president. Just an overly involved board member who took the job way too seriously. The HOA itself had approved my pool, and I had the permits to prove it. But Karen? She refused to back down. The warnings kept coming. Some were stuffed into my mailbox. Others slid under my garage door. One day, I even found a printed letter, zip-tied to my fence, as if I was some sort of fugitive, violating HOA law. Then, the petty harassment began. I caught her standing in front of my house, taking pictures of my backyard. I saw her whispering to other neighbors, gesturing toward my pool like it was some kind of plague infecting the community. One morning, I woke up to find a large violation sign staked into my front yard, right next to my mailbox. That one actually made me laugh. I walked outside, yanked the sign out of the ground, and tossed it into my garage. As I turned around, I saw Karen standing on the sidewalk, arms crossed, watching me with pure disgust. You really should just take it down, she said, shaking her head. I smirked. Not happening. She clenched her jaw. You're making a big mistake. At the time, I thought she was just bluffing, trying to intimidate me into following her ridiculous demands, but I should have known better. Karen wasn't warning me. She was planning something worse. It started like any other day. I woke up, grabbed a coffee, and left for work, completely unaware that Karen's master plan was already in motion. By noon, while I was busy handling reports at the office, a cement truck was rolling up my driveway. Karen had finally snapped. She had hired a contractor, one who had no idea he was about to commit a crime. She handed him forged paperwork, claiming to be acting on behalf of the HOA, and instructed him to do the unthinkable: fill my pool with cement. And the worst part? She watched it happen. Neighbors later told me that she stood in her yard, arms folded, watching with a smug expression as tons of wet concrete were poured into my backyard oasis. She even pulled out her phone and filmed it, like she was capturing some grand victory. By the time I pulled into my driveway that evening, it was too late. At first, I didn't even register what I was looking at. The moment I stepped into my backyard, I felt a weird disconnect between what I knew should be there and what I was actually seeing. My beautiful crystal clear pool, gone. Instead, in its place was a solid gray slab of concrete, still slightly wet in some areas. The pool ladder stuck out of the cement like some warped modern art piece. I stood there, frozen. My brain refused to process the insanity of it. That's when I heard the voice I dreaded most. "Well," Karen said, her tone dripping with satisfaction, "that looks much better." I turned, and there she was, standing on her porch, sipping one of those awful iced teas she was always drinking. She smiled. "I told you it was a violation." My fists clenched. "You did this?" She shrugged. It had to be done. I could barely hear her, over the rage pounding in my ears. I wasn't just furious. I was in shock. Who in their right mind would do something like this? That's when it hit me. This wasn't just vandalism. This was felony-level destruction of property. And Karen, she had just ruined her own life. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at my cement-filled pool, my brain refusing to believe what my eyes were seeing. The backyard that had once been my oasis was now a graveyard. The pool ladder, half submerged in concrete, stuck out like some kind of cruel joke. Then, Karen opened her mouth. "Consider it taken care of," she said, smug as ever. I turned to face her, barely able to contain my rage. "You did this?" She sipped her iced tea, completely unfazed. "I told you the pool was a violation. Now it's not." I could barely breathe. "You trespassed on my property. You destroyed my pool. Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Karen scoffed, as if I was the one being unreasonable. "Oh, relax," she said. "This was for the good of the neighborhood. You should be thanking me. Your pool was bringing down property values." I laughed, actually laughed, but it wasn't from humor. It was from sheer disbelief. "This is insane," I said, shaking my head. "You literally just committed a crime." That's when I saw it, the first flicker of doubt in Karen's eyes. She had spent so long believing she was above the rules, that she could enforce her own version of justice, that she hadn't even considered what would happen if someone fought back. She waved a dismissive hand. "It's not a big deal. The HOA will back me up." I stepped closer, my voice dead serious. "Karen, the HOA approved my pool, legally. You just destroyed $50,000 worth of property. That's not an HOA issue. That's a felony." The color drained from her face. Finally, it hit her. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911 right in front of her. She panicked. "Wait, what are you doing?" I met her gaze. Stone cold. "Calling the police." For the first time ever, Karen had nothing to say. She just stood there, frozen, watching, as I told the dispatcher. "My neighbor just filled my pool with cement while I was at work, and I have proof." Karen's smirk vanished the moment I said the words. "I'm calling the police." Her usual smug confidence, gone. She tried to backpedal. "Now, hold on a second. There's no need for that," she said, waving her hands as if she could erase what she had just done. "This was an HOA matter." I shook my head, already dialing. "No, Karen, this was a crime." The dispatcher picked up. 911, what's your emergency?" I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady, even though rage boiled inside me. My neighbor just filled my pool with cement while I was at work, I said, staring directly at Karen as I spoke. This is felony property destruction. Karen's face drained of color. I could tell she had never expected me to fight back. She was so used to people just rolling over, too scared of the HOA to challenge her. But this time, she had messed with the wrong person. The dispatcher sounded stunned. Sir, did you say they poured cement into your pool? Yes. I took a slow step toward the mess in my backyard. I have video evidence from my security cameras. Karen's eyes widened. Security cameras. I saw her realization hit all at once. There was no way out of this. The dispatcher confirmed officers were on their way. Please remain on the scene and don't engage with the suspect. I hung up and crossed my arms. Cops are coming, Karen, she snapped. You're overreacting, she shrieked. This is ridiculous. I was just following the HOA guidelines. I shook my head. You forged documents, hired unlicensed contractors, and destroyed my property. That's not HOA business, Karen. That's a felony. She was breathing fast now, her confidence shattering with every passing second. For the first time ever, Karen had no control. And the best part? The moment the cops arrived, she was about to find out exactly how serious this was. The moment the police cruiser pulled up to my house, I saw Karen, physically tense. 2 officers stepped out. One was an older guy with a hardened look, clearly a veteran on the force. The other was younger, probably newer to the job, but both had the same no-nonsense expression when they saw the cement-filled crater that was once my pool. Are you the homeowner? The older officer asked me. Yes, sir, I said. I came home from work and found my pool completely filled with cement. I have video footage proving that my neighbor, Karen, hired someone to do this without my consent. Karen gasped in fake outrage. That's a lie, she screeched. I was just enforcing HOA rules. The older officer turned to her, unimpressed. Ma'am, the HOA does not have the authority to demolish private property. Karen's mouth snapped shut. I pulled out my phone. Here's the footage from my security cameras. The younger officer took my phone and watched, his eyebrows raising higher with every second. The footage showed everything. The cement truck, the workers, and worst of all, Karen standing there, supervising the entire thing. The older cop let out a low whistle. Well, he said, turning back to Karen, that's not looking good for you. Karen's face turned a deep shade of red. I was just following protocol, she stammered. The HOA doesn't allow unauthorized pools. It's in the rules. The officer folded his arms. Ma'am, do you have any legal documents proving the HOA ordered this demolition? Karen hesitated. The younger officer chimed in. Because the homeowner here has a legal permit for the pool. He looked down at my paperwork, then back at Karen. And your HOA rulebook, it doesn't say anything about pools needing removal. That's when the contractor ratted her out. One of the cement workers, who had been waiting by his truck, stepped forward and pointed at Karen. She told us this was an official HOA job, he said. She gave us paperwork. The officers turned to Karen. You have that paperwork with you, ma'am? The older cop asked. Karen froze, because she knew exactly what was coming next. Karen stood there, completely frozen, as the officers waited for her to respond. The older cop repeated the question. Ma'am, do you have any legal documents authorizing this demolition? Karen's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She knew she was caught. The younger officer looked at the contractor. You said she gave you paperwork? The man nodded. Yeah, she handed us official-looking HOA documents and said the homeowner had refused to remove the pool, despite multiple warnings. She said the HOA finally stepped in and ordered it to be filled. I smirked. There it was. The older officer took a step toward Karen. Ma'am, do you have those documents with you? Karen swallowed hard. I don't have them right now. That's because they don't exist, I cut in. The HOA never ordered this. She faked it. The officer nodded. That's what I thought. He turned back to Karen, his voice now firm. Ma'am, forging official documents is a serious offense, and given the value of this pool, you're looking at felony property destruction. Karen's eyes widened in horror. Felony, she whispered. The younger officer pulled out a notebook. That's right. Since the damage exceeds $50,000, this qualifies as criminal mischief in the first degree. A felony. Karen's breathing sped up. This is insane. I was just trying to help the community. The older officer sighed. Ma'am, helping the community does not involve trespassing onto private property and destroying someone's pool with cement. He reached for his handcuffs. You're under arrest for felony destruction of property, trespassing, and forgery. Karen stumbled back. No, you can't do this. I was just... The younger officer stepped forward, firmly taking her wrists as his partner cuffed her. The neighborhood had been watching from their porches, and as soon as the cuffs clicked, I heard someone cheer. Karen whipped her head around. You're all gonna regret this, she screamed as they led her toward the cruiser. I was right. I was protecting the hoe. They shoved her inside the squad car and slammed the door shut. And just like that, Karen's HOA reign of terror was over. With Karen hauled off in handcuffs, the neighborhood was buzzing. People who had never spoken to me before suddenly came over, shaking their heads in disbelief. I can't believe she actually did that, one neighbor muttered. Another snorted. I can. She's been out of control for years. It turned out I wasn't the only person Karen had been harassing. She had spent years terrorizing homeowners over minor things. Mailboxes, lawn decorations, even the color of people's front doors. But this was different. This wasn't some petty HOA fine. This was a crime, and the HOA board, they were scrambling to distance themselves from her. By the next day, the HOA held an emergency meeting. I showed up, not because I cared about their stupid rules, but because I wanted to see them squirm. The president, a guy named Ron, looked visibly stressed. He cleared his throat and addressed the room. We want to make it absolutely clear that the actions taken by Karen were not sanctioned by the HOA, he said. She acted entirely on her own. Yeah, sure, she did. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. Funny, because she sure thought she was doing this for the HOA. Ron winced. We understand how this looks, and we assure you we are conducting a full internal review to ensure nothing like this ever happens again. I smirked. You mean, now that it's a felony? A few people chuckled, and Ron turned red. We are also holding a vote, he continued quickly, to determine whether Karen should be removed from the HOA board immediately. That was the fastest vote in HOA history. Within seconds, Karen was kicked off the board. Then, someone in the back, an older guy I barely knew, spoke up. We should ban her from ever being on the board again. A murmur of agreement swept through the room. The final vote? Unanimous. Karen was permanently banned from any future HOA leadership. Not that it would matter for long, because her problems were just getting started. Getting Karen arrested was satisfying, but I wasn't about to stop there. She didn't just annoy me, she destroyed my property, and she was going to pay for it, literally. The morning after her arrest, I called my lawyer. I want to sue, I said, wasting no time. He chuckled. I was hoping you'd say that. We had everything we needed. Security footage showing Karen supervising the cement truck. Signed statements from the contractor proving she forged HOA documents. Police reports confirming she was already facing felony charges. This was the easiest case of my lawyer's career. The lawsuit included 3 key demands. Karen would pay for the complete reconstruction of my pool. She would cover my legal fees. I was suing for damages, both financial and emotional distress. Karen, of course, tried to fight it. From what I heard, she begged the HOA to back her up, but after kicking her off the board, they wanted nothing to do with her. So, she had to get her own lawyer, one who, from what I could tell, was not very good. The case went to court, and it was a massacre. Karen's defense? She thought she was doing the right thing. The judge didn't care. This is a clear-cut case of property destruction, the judge said. And given the defendant's fraudulent actions, I have no choice but to rule in favor of the plaintiff. I won, and the damages, over $100,000. Karen freaked out in the courtroom. I don't have that kind of money, she shouted. The judge simply shrugged. Then you'll have to find a way to pay. Her lawyer looked miserable. He knew she was doomed. Karen tried to negotiate with me after the verdict, offering to pay in installments. I just smiled. No, I want everything. And with no other options left, she had only one way to get the money. She had to sell her house, the same house where she once ruled as the HOA queen. Now, it was the very thing that would ruin her. Karen had spent years acting like she owned this neighborhood. She treated people like they were beneath her, enforcing rules that didn't exist, terrorizing homeowners over the smallest things, and throwing her weight around like she was some kind of suburban dictator. But now, she was being forced to sell her house, the very place she had turned into her personal HOA kingdom. Word spread fast. The same neighbors who had once feared her now watched gleefully as the for sale sign went up in her yard. She tried everything to avoid it. She applied for loans, denied. She begged family members for help. They refused. She even tried filing for bankruptcy, but the judge ruled that her debts to me were non-dischargeable because they stemmed from criminal activity. She was trapped, and so with no other choice, Karen moved out. The day she left, I made sure to be outside. I sat on my deck, sipping a cold drink, watching as movers packed up her things. She caught me staring and glared. "I hope you're happy." I grinned. "Oh, I am." She huffed and stomped into her car. As she drove away, one of my neighbors, an older guy who had put up with years of Karen's nonsense, raised a beer in my direction. "To karma," he said. I laughed and raised my glass. To karma. The best part? A new family moved in shortly after. Nice people. Quiet. Definitely not HOA tyrants. And my pool. Oh, I had it rebuilt. Bigger and better than before. Every morning, I sit on my deck, enjoying my perfectly legal pool, and I think about Karen. Probably somewhere miserable, regretting the day she ever messed with me. She wanted control over this neighborhood. Now, she doesn't even live here anymore. And that, my friends, is what you call the ultimate karma.